Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcake. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Today we have new amazing stories, so subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. What action of your management's quickly ruined staff motivation? After working for a company for 10 years, things quickly went from bad to worse after we were unable to secure a contract with the company for which we were producing parts. We needed to make a lot of changes to the process in order to make things better, and the senior tried to tell the owner of the company about the problem with the parts. The owner was willing to listen, but a poor decision ultimately resulted in the contract being lost. Because of this, we were unable to generate sufficient revenue to pay our employees, and as a result, we lost approximately 15 to 17 of the 25 people who worked there. Then, we downsized from a dual-bay warehouse to a single-bay warehouse, and because we did not have the financial means to hire a professional crew to move out equipment, lay out new wiring for the machines, and other tasks, we were unable to function for approximately 3 months. During this time, the owner was yelling at us, accusing us of being incompetent, and suggesting that he should fire everyone. Due to the fact that we were working with a machine that was 20 to 30 years old and was only held together by a great deal of luck, we had a lot of trouble getting parts out of the door. When we were reduced to a skeleton crew, everyone was responsible for the work of 3 to 4 people each, and the pay certainly wasn't worth it. Due to the fact that a lot of us were pushed to our limits, I was the first to basically break. In 2014, my ankle gave out on me, and despite the fact that the owner had stated that our health was priority, he certainly did not care until something catastrophic occurred. Initially, I was not terminated from my position. Rather, I was placed on medical leave. However, after 3 months of being on leave, during which I was wearing a cast on one of my legs to support my ankle, he called me in and basically informed me that he could no longer hold my position. A negative aspect was that I was the last remaining technician at the company, and I was told that after I was fired, the entire establishment began to disintegrate. Approximately 2 years later, the proprietor suffered a stroke, which resulted in the closure of the business. He was not a bad person, rather he was a poor businessman and owner for the kind of company that he owned. He was in his 70s and beyond, had no interest of retiring, and would have preferred to die working rather than closing the doors. We're all aware that the stress would eventually catch up with him. Nevertheless, I'm certain that his family, particularly his grandchildren, would disagree with him, and the manner in which he was compelled to retire is extremely unfortunate. In some sense, I believe and hope that it'll now enable him to spend any time that he has left with his grandchildren. All of us kept saying he should really close the door, sell the company, and enjoy life. I want to reiterate that I do not harbor any ill will toward him in general. Whichever few of us were still around would either find something else to do or find a way to survive. It was excruciating to watch this one respectable company that was doing pretty well gradually deteriorate in such a manner. There's a part of me that sincerely wishes I had left earlier, and while I was looking into other employment opportunities, nothing came up before my ankle gave out. The lesson that I have learned is that saying things like I don't really have another job and I stuck with this job is a negative attitude, and that working yourself to the point of exhaustion is not going to help you. With the knowledge that I have now, if I could go back in time, I would have left around the 5-year mark when things were beginning to go in the wrong direction. Unfortunately, just like a lot of other people, they're unable to muster the courage to quit when they should be in a position to do so. I worked in a restaurant and cocktail bar. The workplace was a complete and utter nightmare as it was a disorganized mess. They made the decision to hire a new manager who had a history of transforming unsuccessful bars in London into enormously successful establishments. Without a doubt, he was going to be the best boss I'd ever had. Nothing was too small for him. He genuinely cared about the staff, he'd find time for people, he knew everything there was to know about the trade, and all in all, he was just ridiculously good at his job. The problem, however, was that the owners didn't want to spend the money that they had said they would be willing to when they hired him, which made it difficult for him to see out some of his visions for the place. However, in a number of cases, he simply brought the things he wanted to make the place better out of his own pocket. To a large extent, he was earning money to work there. A few months later, morale is at an all-time high, everyone's having a good time working there, they're all aware of their roles within the company and what's expected of them during shifts. The bar team had gone through a rigorous training program regarding the cocktail menu, and everything was going well. Up until the day he suddenly disappeared. Strange. Once more, nothing happened the following day, and once more. Every other member of the management team is keeping a very low profile. I decided to give him a call because I wanted to make sure that he was okay. In the end, it was determined by the owners that he had completed all of the tasks that were necessary and was no longer required. Unfortunately, they did not do so. Instead of expressing gratitude for his services and wishing him luck in the future, they chose to accuse him of stealing and threatened to ruin his career if he did not choose to leave of his own accord in the middle of his contract without being forced to do so. Goes without saying that the person they appointed to take his place was a mouthy little gobass who believed it would be wise to boost profit by cutting down on losses from waste. Isn't that a good idea? It's reasonable to assume that this is the case. However, her concept was that if a waiter made a mistake on an order, then that waiter was expected to pay for the mistake out of their wages according to the retail value of the item. When we serve steaks, we'd sell them for more than 35 pounds. A single mistake made by a waiter could cost them their entire shift's pay. Due to the fact that the first two people she tried it on threatened to leave, her idea did not really take off or become popular. It didn't make a difference because within 3 months, approximately half of the workforce pulled out of their jobs. The owner came in one day and threatened to fire the head chef, who had literally just become a father that same week, as well as the bartender, me. He wasn't aware it was me, though, that refused to serve his friends, trying to order steaks during a time when the kitchen was closed, and a large number of the kitchen staff were being forced to move their stuff out of the on-site accommodation they were living in due to an unsafe rating delivered by fire safety. At that time, I was one of only 3 bar staff members, and I was in the rota to work approximately 100 hours per week. To add insult to injury, the owner came in one day and threatened to fire the head chef. Consequently, I stood there and watched as this beautiful woman ripped into the head chef. It was not in the office or in the backyard, rather, it was in the middle of the restaurant. Remember, it was outside of the time for food service, but there were still customers in the bar. After he'd finished his rant, I went over and informed him that I was the bartender who would not serve his friends while the kitchen was closed. I also told him that he could save his threats because I would not work another day for him under any circumstances. I also wished him luck in running his bar with a solid 2 people, knowing that I was the only member of staff that was still present in that building, and that I was the only one who actually knew how to make the sodden cocktails that they sold. In the end, those 2 individuals also decided to leave, and as a consequence of that, they stopped operations permanently. Which homeowners association rule has been the worst for you to deal with or find out? I used to rent a house in a neighborhood where the homeowners association had a very stringent parking policy. Regardless of the number of bedrooms, each house was only permitted to have 1 car parked on the street. No matter where you parked in the neighborhood, you had to have a parking sticker, and as I found out later, motorcycles were not allowed to be visible from the street. The only way to obtain a new sticker if you needed one for any reason, new car, cracked windshield, etc., was to turn in your old one. In the neighborhood, only 2 or 3 houses had garages. The remaining homes all had carports with driveway access to the street. Up until now, this wasn't an issue because I have 3 cars and a motorcycle. I parked my daily driver at my house and kept the motorcycle and 2 of my cars at my parents' house when I moved in. It took a lot of time to move in using the largest U-Haul I could rent. We used my Suburban, my Tahoe, and my friend's Corolla when she moved in. We were so tired at the end of the first day that we parked 4 cars at the house and went to bed. We expected to receive a phone call, a warning sticker, or something similar. When we awoke the following morning, the Suburban, Tahoe, and Corolla had been towed and impounded, along with whatever was still inside them. After at most 10 hours of parking in front of the house, they were towed. They just towed them. No phone calls, no warning stickers, nothing. The Suburban was considered oversized by the impound lot, so it cost an extra $300 to be released from impound along with the Tahoe and Corolla. I called the HOA after that, feeling very confused and angry, and that's when I found out about the motorcycle rule. And because Texas is so big, the impound lot was across town and an hour away. When one of my neighbors hosted a Christmas party, 10 of the attendees' cars were towed off the street in a single evening. This wasn't all bad, though, because my parents were remodeling the house where I was living, so my motorcycle was there too. At one point, I was living with 3 other people who also own motorcycles. We parked all of our motorcycles in the living room and used the sliding glass door to enter and exit the house because we didn't have a garage. However, this was actually a lot of fun because one summer evening, after riding my motorcycle straight into the living room on my way home from work, I decided that I should just continue riding my motorcycle into my bedroom. After that, I just went to bed after getting off my bike. The following morning, I got up, dressed, and rode my motorcycle into the kitchen from my bedroom. While wearing my helmet, goggles, and bike gear, I made and consumed a bowl of cold cereal and milk on top of my still-running motorcycle. Naturally, my roommates were all awakened. I had to explain that my Lucky Charms tasted better because of the exhaust and carbon monoxide that filled the house. They shrugged and went back to sleep. Even though our neighborhood is not an HOA, the city came out and gave our neighborhood fix-it tickets. Because there was dead grass on my lawn, I received a ticket. This occurred during California's severe drought. We could only water our lawn once a week anyhow, and save as much water as you can posters were all over the city. That being said, I appreciate the contradictory advice to conserve all your water, but F you if you let your lawn die. Background: a neighbor of ours was renting a house whose owner had passed away and whose heirs desired to sell the property. The neighbor was given X days to vacate the property, so she threw most of her belongings into her driveway and invited people to make offers. When someone complained to the city, she was given a ticket for holding more than 2 garage sales in a single month. I practice law in Texas. I had a client who received a fine from the HOA for not watering her property enough the same week that she received a fine from the city for overwatering. I brought her case before the HOA board in the city, where the board denied my arguments and said she had to follow the HOA water regulations even if they violated drought watering restrictions. The judge rejected my argument, stating that city law superseded HOA law. Collected all my letters and pleas, assembled them into a neat bundle, and forwarded copies to our senators and representatives at the federal, state, and local levels, the city council, and pretty much every environmental organization we could locate. The HOA attempted to send me a cease and desist order and threatened to sue me to recover their costs of compliance because they were so overloaded with requests for information from so many sources. I chuckled and said, "Come on." Upon completion of their relevant fact-finding, all interested parties essentially wrote strongly worded letters expressing their disgust with the HOA's actions and their intention to introduce legislation prohibiting HOAs from enforcing watering laws that conflict with city-level watering restrictions. HOA subtly changed the bylaws to remove the mention of watering restrictions during drought. During the 2017 legislative session, the Texas legislature is expected to address this. In the south, there's a lake in my parents' neighborhood, and there are neighborhood docks beside the lake. 12 of the neighbors have boats, so there are 12 dock spots. It was decided back in 1997 that boat owners would contribute $500 per person annually toward their dock slot to a separate fund for dock maintenance and replacement. When the 12 families who have been paying into the fund for the past 18 years, none of them have moved here, and everyone else who owns a boat lives on the lake, went to withdraw funds last year in order to replace the wooden walkways on the dock and purchase 2 lifts, they discovered that the fund to which they'd been contributing for years had vanished. The HOA informed them that that was under a previous president and board, and we voted 3-2 to rescind the dock fund and include it in the general fund. The tennis court and a few paths were then poorly repaired using funds from the general fund. The HOA stated in an email to all residents, "We'll rebuild the dock fund, but every house in the neighborhood will be assessed an $800 fee. Please vote yes or no to rebuild the fund," in response to the family's outcry. The vote was overwhelmingly negative. Because of their somewhat questionable bylaws, they were unable to take any action. but the president of the board made a serious mistake. This summer, she and the other 3 members of the board will be absent. She obtained permission from her HOA friend to erect a 6-foot-tall wrought iron fence around her several-acre property, which would have easily cost upward of $70,000. As per the bylaw, a 4-to-1 vote's required to revoke any variance that's been granted. You can guess what the first vote of the 4 candidates vying for the open seats will be on. They are people who will be duped by the misappropriation of dock funds. Guys, thank you for all the support and guys. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.